I did it. I pushed the live button.
Oh, good.
Ta-da!
It's working.
Oh, yes.
Whoa!
Oh, look at that flag.
Oh,
I noticed it's the combo flag. That's a nice one.
Yeah.
that's good stuff.
I'm into it.
Yeah. Welcome to the Echo Show, our Queerantine special.
That's the first time someone said that out loud.
I know. It was
Queerantine.
like, how does this feel?
You did it right.
Yes. We're just oh gosh, that's not. There we go. That's better. You can tell that Maui usually does all the technical stuff. All right, here we are, some queers, and we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she, her, and I am bisexual. Abby, you can go next.
Oh, my name's Abby. I use she, her pronouns. I'm somewhere on the demisexual spectrum. Not 100% sure about the specifics, but I am dating a girl, so.
I'm that girl. All right, how about Lotus?
Hey, I'm Lotus, they, them. Pan-romantic, non-binary. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Man, those are pulling out some labels from my head from college.
Food. All right, and Ray.
I'm Ray. I'm Ray Van Fox. I use he, him pronouns. I am queer, trans, non-binary mush.
We all seem to have the same like hand gestures when it comes to our identities. I love that. It's very reflective of queer culture.
I was gonna say they're all pretty amorphous, right? Like it's
We'd all know, like,
how many parts of the Venn diagram do we plan on?
Yeah.
introducing here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here we are. Oh, my dad's here. Who put that comment in there? Is Maui lurking? He is. Hi, Dad. That was so weird. I didn't know that he could do that without being on the screen.
Wow.
All right, so we're gonna talk about queer representation today. Extra fun, extra gay Echo Show tonight. So first on our agenda we have theater and musical theater. Whoever wants to start that conversation, and if you're watching, feel free to leave maybe your favorite examples of representation in theater. We can feature it on the screen, or Ghost Maui can.
Well, a lot of us have some involvement with theater, right?
That's true. Yeah. I do quite a bit of theater here in Iowa City. I've done some back when I was living in Chicago with Maui and Echo at times. And I'm not, in Iowa City, we're not so up on like cutting edge this year theater. But I do just, want to give a quick shout out to the fact that a musical won the Pulitzer Prize this year, like 2 weeks ago, something very recent, that is called A Strange Loop, that the main character is a gay Black man working as an usher in a theater. And it's a very like meta, like the character is writing a musical that is kind of the musical that you are watching-ish. Sounds really cool. Hence the Strange Loop, I think, is the point of that. But it does, and as far as I'm aware, it was also written by a gay Black man, though I have to admit I have not looked that part up. But given the meta nature of it, I have a feeling that the writer and the narrator and the main character play.
Can we like answer this question that's like been on my mind about this? Like, why do we see a lot of? Maybe this is just like I'm feeding into my own stereotypes, but why do we see a lot of people, a lot of LGBT people somehow like getting involved in theater, especially like at a young age? Like, why do you think do you think that's actually like a myth, or is it like, there is some basis in reality for that, and there's like a strong reason that exists? So not even just in the characters, but people who perform and people who write and direct.
That's a good question. I'm sure there's tons and tons of writing on this, academic and otherwise, none of which I have read. But my own thoughts around that sort of go towards the idea that a lot of, certainly up until this point in time, a lot of queer folks have had to sort of play certain roles in their lives in order to be accepted, and are not always able to like be their true selves. And there's something that can be really maybe familiar and or, attractive about doing that sort of thing on stage. But that's, I personally, it has taken me a while to get back into acting in order to get roles that I would actually want to be playing. That like there was a period of time where I was playing the gender that I did not want to be portraying in my own life. And so then I sort of stopped acting for a long time until I felt like maybe I could get cast as the gender that I did want to be portraying, both on and off stage. So it's, that also is like, theater is a place to play, has been a place to play gender-wise for me as well. I think even back in high school, I played a young boy on stage, and that felt right. And that was the beginning of a long journey towards figuring some things out. But that's, I don't know, that's my guess.
Yeah, maybe it's like it's a safety net almost, the ability to like, you're playing around, people are like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's theater, right? And everyone's secretly like trying to figure things out and connect dots in the background.
Mm-hmm. It's a safe place to do a lot of the work that you might be doing for your own self. Yeah, I don't know. It's a theory. It's a working theory.
A theatrical theory.
There it is.
It's also really interesting how theater communities seem to be so accepting, at least for me in high school and in college when I went to school for theater. I feel like I learned a lot about the queer community just purely from people that I interacted with in theater. That is another question to address, I guess. Why is that? Maybe purely because of the getting to express yourself more. It just draws more people of that type together.
Well, when you talk about like chosen family and chosen community that you want to be a part of, when you have an art form that is a very group effort, like it is a group project every time to do theater, and you find people there that are like you, that feel safe and good to be around and good to work with, and you kind of create these little like pockets of safe places and safe community to be around, then I think it just sort of like, the more queers that are part of it, the larger the like orbit or something, the center of gravity that can pull more of them into those spaces and be welcoming and be, community for them. Yeah. I mean, it feels like that for me too, but I mean, it's not just like plays or musicals. I mean, happens in other kinds of performance like drag or other places that would have that kind of performative aspect maybe, but also other kinds of things that can pull like a community of people together.
Even way back in the days of like extreme sexism, like, okay, you think of Shakespeare, right? And it's like well known for having men play feminine characters. And
they had to by law.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like set a precedent of, that being the space to where that's okay, where that's like, seen as normal.
There's a lot of gender play in Shakespeare. Absolutely. And it is, not necessarily a direct precursor to drag, but like there's there's some little through line there probably within.
I'm sure there's plenty of things written about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
What was the first musical or play that you remember that had some kind of LGBT character in it?
I mean, my reading of Twelfth Night is such that Viola is genderqueer, but that's my own. That was my own thing when I watched it as a kid. I was like, "Ooh, what's going on there? Something cool, something I like." But
I'm honestly only familiar with the story of that because of the Amanda Bynes movie. She's the man.
she's the man. That's
Man.
yeah. Well,
There was something about She's the Man that I was like, huh.
yeah.
Also Mulan, huh.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. For me, because I'm old, it was The Journey of Natty Gann, which is a movie, not theater, but it was that same young girl dresses up as boy to be able to do some kind of big adventure, blah, 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 in a Mulan kind of way. But
Is it sad that the first musical I've seen, or I remember with the LGBT characters, and mind you, I went to like a theatrical middle school. I was like a theater major when I was a kid. And the first play I remember was Avenue Q with Bert and Ernie, the roommate puppets.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time I remember like, oh. Okay.
I'm not familiar with like anything theater related. I don't know plays or anything. So puppets?
Yeah, I was in it
Puppets.
in high school. I'll have to find the DVD.
All right. I've never heard of this play before.
Trying to think. Oh,
Yeah.
my high school did Rent, the school
Ooh.
version of Rent, my freshman year, and I was a rather conservative high schooler, so to see that on stage for the first time with kids my age, I was like,
yeah.
What's going on?
But Rent is such a powerhouse in the theater queer scene. I mean, the duets by themselves are so beautiful. The Tango Maureen with two people singing, a boy and a girl both in love with the same girl. That's good stuff.
That is good stuff. Yeah.
So I think that was probably my first exposure, and that was still like high school. So
I studied Angels in America in college, and that was really the big like watershed moment for theater, for like serious, not musical theater. In when was that? Early 90s. I was not in college in early 90s, but I think it came out in the early 90s. And that was a pretty huge deal because it was, 2 plays, 6 hours of theater, and a whole huge cast of multiple queer, and not queer, but lots of queer people in that. That was sort of like the first time I was like, oh, we can talk about this. This is really like a thing that we can like put these lives on stage and see them. And it means something to a lot of the audience too, not just like, not just straight people watching it, like queer people get to see themselves on stage. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
that's a big deal. Yeah. For teenagers, especially high school. I don't know if I feel like we did Almost Maine in high school. Do you know that play, Almost Maine? I feel like every high school's like go-to because they're very like short scenes. I'm pretty sure it's like easier to direct than others.
Yeah.
And I remember that play we did had a gay couple in it.
Who like find out they're gay for each other on stage. That is
Yeah, and it's cool. It's just like casual, like #casual queer. Just put it in there.
And
as one of many
love stories.
I was really lucky to go to a high school that supported a lot of queer theater, and I can't imagine how important that is for someone whose parents won't let them watch movies with queer characters or consume other media, but will be like, yeah, you can go see the school play, how important it might be for them to see that represented for the first time outside of their home.
I come from a small town in Tennessee. We didn't have theater in my high school. So like,
are you okay?
How did you survive? Where did you find your friends?
For real.
I read a lot of books. Literally like met one of my best friends just like in the library. But anyway, yeah, we didn't like didn't have theater in high school.
Hmm.
But like a town over, the town where I actually worked before I moved here, they had like a community theater thing, and it was really cool because like there were kids that I knew because I worked in teen programming in the library back home, and so like there were kids that I knew from the programming that I did who maybe weren't allowed to read books with queer characters or see movies with queer characters, but they were really involved in the local theater. And so I don't know exactly what kind of productions they put on or anything, but like knowing that they had that opportunity to maybe be around people who were different was something that really that's something that was really reassuring to me. Sorry, my best friend just commented about how we end up leaving.
How did we deal with it? We left.
Fair.
Thanks, Brax.
To Chicago.
Well, that's a good kind of segue into our next topic, which is representation in books.
Books.
Yes. I'm not much of a reader, but she is.
Yes, tell us. You didn't have theater, so what were the books?
Well, like I said, I did teen programming, so I read a lot of YA. And here in the last few years, it's really opened up to having a lot more, not just representation, but own voices representation, which I think is so great. You're seeing, and it's not just like white gay man writes about a white gay boy in high school. It's a much more broad spectrum of representation and own voices representation too. We've got books about wide varieties of kids in one school. One of my favorite series is the Wayward Children series by Shannon McGuire. And it's sort of like a portal fantasy, so kind of like Alice in Wonderland, that sort of thing, where like kids go to other worlds through little portals. But this is about like kids who have been to these worlds and they come back. And it's written by, if I remember correctly, an asexual author. The first book's main character is asexual, but there's also the other, because it sort of has a big cast. Like there's one like character that's really the main focus, but the others are like just as important. They're not just like appear on one page and then gone for the rest of the book. Like
they're actual really, characters that really grow and learn.
And you know, there's a lesbian girl, a bisexual girl, a trans boy.
Oh man, it's like those Power Rangers of
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's such a great series, and like the first book, the main character is the asexual girl, but then like the second book is kind of a prequel about the lesbian girl and her twin sister. And we're hoping, there's 5 books in the series right now, and hoping that the next one that comes out focuses on the story of the trans boy. But it's like it makes it clear that these characters are diverse characters, and like it like, even if it doesn't like explicitly say that that Nancy is asexual, like she says outright that she doesn't feel attracted to anyone, girls or boys or anything in between.
It's close enough.
She doesn't feel any attraction. So it's like they explicitly say it, like she doesn't quite have the vocabulary for it to have that exact word, but she still knows how she feels. I recommend.
What is the series called again?
It's called the Wayward Children series. They're super short books too, like less than 200 pages a book. They're so good.
I'm totally taking notes.
Very beautifully written, and it's by an author. If I remember correctly, the author is asexual.
This is for children? This is written for kids?
It's a YA book, yeah. It's for like teens. But yeah, it's super short. It's about high school kids. It's fantastic.
That's exciting.
And I've seen a lot of I can't remember any I want to say Meredith Russo had a book called If I Was Your Girl. Meredith Russo is a trans woman. She wrote a book about a trans high school girl, won a bunch of awards for it. It ended up being like a huge thing. Um, uh, Case and Calendar is a big name in YA right now, and they are, I can't remember if they're trans or non-binary, but definitely not cisgender, and they reflect that in their books. It's become such a great place for authors to tell their story, and especially queer authors. And I've been really appreciative of that, because like it's things that if I had read those books when I was in high school, maybe I would have realized some things a bit earlier, you know. And so it's great to know that the kids now have an opportunity to read that stuff. And working in a library, I worked with the children's librarian quite a bit too, and we actually had someone ask for children's books,
Like little kids?
Yeah, like picture books.
And those exist. Like I Am Jazz, and there's so many now.
We had someone ask for them, so me and another lady that I worked with, like, started researching and we gave the director a list of titles. We were like, someone asked for books like this. Here are some books that are good, that they don't have any sort of harmful stereotypes or messages. And so we were able to get a bunch of books for kids, and we did have a little bit of backlash. There was of all the books that we got, because we got quite a few, of all the books that we got, Worm Loves Worm, which is about two worms.
I love that book.
Someone filled out a form to request to have us remove that one. And I mean, like, we had,
but they're worms.
They're worms.
Exactly. That's what we were like, really?
Did they think the worms were phallic or something?
So dumb.
The worms, like, they are getting ready for the wedding, and like one of them's like, well, which one's gonna be the bride? Which one's gonna be the groom?
Yeah, like which one's
And
gonna
so
wear
then
the
they
hat?
like, one wears like the hat and the dress, and the other one wears a suit with the veil. And
Cute.
this one family was very, very offended by that. It was
It's just so
hilarious.
cute, though.
It's such an adorable book, and they're worms, like,
And they're worms, and all they say is, "I love
like,
you. I want to be married to you." And all their friends are like, "Well, we have to have a wedding," and they're like, "But can we just be married?" It's like my favorite thing.
It's adorable.
Such a cute book.
Mm-hmm.
Low key, whenever I know someone that's like gonna have a baby, I'm like sliding those in there.
Yes, right. I was just gonna say, I want that list that you've made, Abby.
Yeah, should drop it in the comments.
Good books for kids.
I'll have to and I've put together a list of picture books and some YA, but there was one girl who, she was one of my teen volunteers. She emailed me a list that she put together, where it was just like all of the big like YA books, all the really popular ones that had come out in the last couple years. She like made a list and put specific notes next to each of them on if it was if it had any sort of queer representation in it, if it was an own voices thing, if it had like characters of color in it that were prominent characters. She like went all out on this
annotated
research project. Turn that in.
Yeah.
She's like,
get your thesis,
and she like made this amazing list. I like immediately was like, please email this to me. I need this.
Yeah, put it on the blog somewhere. I want to see it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Do you guys have any other? Oh, there you go. We'll post up Abby's book picks tomorrow.
I have one big book moment from my childhood. It wasn't okay. It's a graphic novel book. Like
that counts.
Yes.
There was a graphic novel.
Important.
They are called After School Nightmare. And it's a comic book, and it has an intersex character in it.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, and I didn't know what intersex was when I was like 14.
Yeah.
But I picked up this book because it actually reminds me of the Wayward Children story. It's all these people when they go to sleep in the nurse's office, they go into this dream world where they have to fight to basically find out who they really are and get stronger or whatever. And the main character, the way they describe it in the book is probably not really intersex accurate, but the person was described as being female from the waist down, but male looking from the waist up. And so around in their life, they, acted like male, or they acted like a man, and they're really against anyone like calling them by feminine pronouns, or like against people saying that they were basically like scared of themselves for being a, having a vagina or whatever. And like over this like series, yeah, there we go, After School Nightmare. And I was like so fascinated by this comic book series that they just happened to have in the library. I don't even think that the librarians even knew what it was about, because if you look at it, if you look at the cover, you look at the art, like it doesn't look like much. It just looks like school, school life.
One of them knew.
Yeah, at least one of them knew. Okay, one of them planted that.
Librarians are so amazing and subversive.
Yeah.
And they're passive aggressive about that stuff if they have to.
And that like opened a whole new door for me of like, I started like getting really invested in, I guess in the genre is like gender bend. Gender bend manga, gender bend anime. It's like a whole branch of Japanese, I don't know, comic life. And like, I just dove into that area real hard after I just saw that one, but it was about an intersex person, which is interesting. Now I know what they were trying to go for, but I didn't understand at the time.
Awesome.
Yeah, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Cool. What about you, Ray? You know any good LGBT books, or are you just taking notes?
I am taking notes. I also, my knowledge is not as maybe up to date.
That's okay.
Given my, I actually do still read a good amount of young adult fiction because that's where all the cool stuff's happening.
Yes.
It's where a lot of genre bending can happen as well as gender bending, which is pretty interesting and exciting to me. My favorite series that has queer characters in it right now is the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater.
Raven Cycle.
I finally bought the first book. I haven't read that series yet. That's like one of the ones that everyone's like, you have to read the Raven Cycle. You have to read it. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I have recently gotten into that weird kind of, not quite magic realism or urban fantasy sort of thing, but where it's real world and there's magical stuff sort of thing. I've gotten really into that sort of stuff.
Well, this will hit all those buttons.
Exactly.
Then. Yeah.
And that's
There's a lot of fan art for this.
I gotta watch this, or I gotta read this, because I watch a lot of booktube videos, and everyone lists that as their favorite series.
It's really good.
One of my favorite booktubers, her booktube is Problems of a Book Nerd. Yes, that is it. Problems of a Book Nerd. Her name is Cece. She is lesbian, so she makes a point of really looking for a lot of books that feature queer characters, and that's one of the main series that she talks about. That one a lot is one of her favorite.
Yeah, the second book in this, there's 4 books in that particular series, and the second book in this series really hits a lot of queer stuff happening. The first one is kind of really doing the world building for you and getting you falling in love with the characters and stuff. But it's one of those oh look, here's a bunch of kids who are in high school and really love each other, and their friend group, if there's one queer, there's more than one queer, because the idea of the token gay character is a fucking myth. Pardon my language, but you don't have one. It's your entire friend group is queer, or it's not. There's not one gay kid is not going to be hanging out with a bunch of cis het kids. It's just it just doesn't happen that way. So this is this is how I feel about this group of characters. It's like as you start, you're like, oh, that one's probably also, and that means that this one, and you just kind of, you know.
So that's my issue, the like tokenization of like these kind of newer shows that blew up the past year of like Love, Simon, which is also based off of a book, Love, Simon.
Mhm.
Simon versus
Not Love. I'm not thinking of Love, Simon though. What am I thinking of?
Show? A movie?
It's a TV show where I don't know. A lot of these like teen shows will have like that one queer character.
Yeah.
It's not Riverdale, is it?
It might be.
Might be Riverdale.
I think there is a two girls
Bang
that are
Theory.
dating on
Oh
that
no, wait,
one.
he's not gay in the show. Never mind.
Oh, does that become canon? Is that a thing that actually happens?
No.
That the two girls get together in Riverdale?
Cheryl and Tony, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And like Tony's kind of a side character. I haven't actually watched Riverdale in a while. It got wild.
But Jughead is clearly like ace coded, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the comics, Jughead is ace, but they ignored that.
Oh, they did. Oh, that's too bad.
Braxton, I'm sorry, I haven't read Openly Straight yet, but I keep meaning to.
Is that a book?
Yes, they've been recommending that one for forever, and I haven't gotten around to reading it yet.
It's another recommendation for the audience and you.
Oof.
They've got you there.
Oof.
Well, let's kind of use that to segue into our next topic, which is representation in TVs and movies. So we're talking kind of about the token gay. I was going to bring up Love, Simon when we were talking about books because I read that book, Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which is a mouthful. And I actually really liked it. And looking back, it is very much...
definitely written by a straight author.
Yes. It's the first,
I didn't know that.
It's the first stepping stone for our society. Like we had movies like Fault in Our Stars that were super popular when we were like high school age. And I feel like on our path to mainstream, to queer characters in mainstream is Simon. And well, it is very obviously written by a straight person. It has a very nice representation of coming out, of parents that are really welcoming and really accepting, which some kids just need in their lives, even if it's just on the screen. And of one of my favorite lines in the book, which I don't think is in the movie, is I don't want to spoil it.
One line. It's one line.
Well, when Simon finds out who's been writing him these letters, he finds out that he's Black, and he, the whole story is they're anonymously exchanging messages and falling in love over their messages. When he finds out that who he's been talking to is Black, he's like, why did I think they were white this whole time? Like, white shouldn't be the default any more than straight is the default. And I think about that quote.
All right, Simon. Good job. Good thought process.
Spoiler. Ghost Maui.
I will say also going back to what Ray was saying about like the problem with like there being like the token gay when really like they all just kind of like flock together. In the first Simon book, of course Simon isn't openly out for most of it, but like he's the only one in his friend group that's queer.
Yeah,
anyway.
he is. Mm-hmm.
And then like fans kept saying like, there's something between Leah and Abby. There's something there. Leah's not jealous of Abby because she has a crush on the
shippers came in.
And so Becky was like,
reliable.
Okay, I hear you, and wrote a whole book about Leah coming out as bi and falling in love with Abby.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah,
now like that is the ultimate fan service.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Why did the default have to be white? Exactly. Okay,
do you know the half of it that just got premiered on Netflix? It's a movie. It actually, I haven't watched it yet, but it's about, I think it's about an Asian American teen in like in the kind of like the middle of nowhere. It seems like she's the only Asian person in their school, and she's a lesbian, and she has the same crush on a girl as the like jock football player star. And it kind of was giving me that, you know, like just regular high school romance kind of vibes, like some of those other shows have. But I like that there's more, you know. It's weird that like straight or like gay white men are like the gateway drugs or the gateway into
Really good.
like everybody else's story. But
Wow.
I guess that's the world we live in.
See, and I feel like, yes, I feel like on kind of the opposite, like lesbian characters or bi characters are often used as like just like a way to get more views, like there are girls kissing in this, you should watch it, sort of thing.
Yeah, queer.
And so like they seem more common almost because they're just kind of a plot device to get the attention of straight guys.
Well, they don't disrupt the male gaze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that so much that is definitely a thing. I mean, you could tell I'm at what world I'm in, but that is very much a thing in anime and manga. Like queer baiting is off the charts, unprecedented levels of queer baiting in that area. I guess I'm not too familiar with it in TV shows, for US TV shows. Maybe books.
I mean, not the like
Supernatural.
Girls kissing, but like queer baiting.
But aren't the two guys like?
They're not though.
No,
it never
not
becomes
canon.
canon.
Yeah, but they're queer baiting two guys.
But they queer baited it for like 10 seasons. So
that's a long time.
It's a long time to not just let it happen.
And Teen Wolf, I was a big Teen Wolf fan.
Oh yeah.
And I still love Styles. He's
He's
still one of my
a
favorite characters.
Fantastic character, to be fair.
And I am, even though they never explicitly said it, I'm still 100% convinced that Styles was bi. And
agreed.
No one will ever convince me otherwise.
There's Braxton talking about Supernatural.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's frustrating. I was an avid Supernatural fan for many years, and it was exhausting. Every episode they're together, you're like, come on.
I watched the first episode of Sherlock the other day. Like, I know Sherlock is like old news.
Memory.
It's been a long time. I know I haven't watched it, but it was on. It was recommended. I was like, okay, I watched the first episode, and the two main characters did have a serious moment.
There's a lot of chemistry. I will not. I'm over it. I had a falling out with that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds. Do you want to talk about it?
I don't.
Oh. Okay.
That one also felt very queer baiting.
Yeah. I felt it the first episode. I went in with no expectations.
That's wild. Yeah.
I haven't even watched it in so long that I don't even remember how. I remember that it was a thing, but I don't remember how intense it was.
No, I try to erase it from my memory.
I was a Moriarty fangirl, so that's mainly what I remember from the show anyway.
There's also, that's a trope that gets used pretty frequently to, I think, interesting effect, depending on how it's used, is that the hero and the villain have some thing going on that you're like, ooh, do I want to ship those two together? Because that's kind of interesting.
Let me get out my Matrix.
Which is why I really, really love Killing Eve, because that entire show is set up to be that. It's not subtextual, where Moriarty and Sherlock is definitely ooh, are they flirting? Are they not? In Killing Eve, it's oh, these two people are absolutely obsessed with each other. And it's two women. And it's a person who works for MI6 and an assassin. And they're both obsessed with each other, and they are both having lots of feelings about the whole situation. And it's very clear. There's not they're not like saying out loud anywhere "I love you" or anything that I remember. But it's like the point of the show is to set up that it's very clear that they are like falling for each other.
So it hasn't happened yet in the show, but it's like it's gonna, like, it's not queerbaiting.
So
I mean, I don't think so. It doesn't feel like queerbaiting to me, but maybe that's because Phoebe Waller-Bridge is one of the writers. She's the one who wrote and is the star of Fleabag. I don't know if you've seen that show, but she's kind of cool.
all right, so Ghost Maui asks, do you feel like straight cis writers do that intentionally to draw on the demographic?
Yeah.
Maybe I feel like sometimes they're trying, like they're like, let me sprinkle some of this in. Like some cis people are passionate about it, straight people are passionate about it, but yeah, honestly, probably a lot of that's happening too.
Issue. My dad likes killing you.
Yeah, right.
This whole issue where, like, during Pride Month in June, every single company comes together and they've all got rainbow logos and all this stuff, and they're like, we love gay people, and it's like, do you, or are you just trying to sell us your product?
Yeah, and then let's talk about your corporate policies for your employees, and then we'll talk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean, gays have money. They want to spend their money. They're big enough demographic to like have market, like create market forces. People want to capitalize on that.
Yeah, but to Stephanie, to your point, at least when it is like two women that they're queer baiting, a lot of that could also be for not necessarily the queer audience.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that's how I felt about the kiss between Willow and what was her name, Tara, on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was one of the first queer ships to become canon on TV that I know of. And that was a big thing. I mean, it was a huge thing, but it was also like they were both pretty femme and they were both just cute and very like
threatening.
They were not gender non-conforming. They were not in any way threatening. They were both people that dudes could jack off to, let's be real. And like the fact that they were kissing on screen was not going to really throw anybody for a huge loop. But it was the first, it happened, and it actually happened. And so the queer community was like, oh shit, that's allowed. Like that's allowed to be on screen. That's cool.
Wait, I need to ask Matt a question.
Braxton has a really good point here. Not casting queer actors or directors except to promote it once or twice a year. They don't even pay them the same, which is insane. And that kind of brings along the topic of how important it is to cast. Oh yeah, and just me. How important it is to cast queer people and such to represent us.
And
I have to plug in my laptop
to like have queer directors
and queer writers to be writing those characters.
Stories,
oh man, the train wrecks of casting cis people as trans characters is just train wreck.
Yeah.
Oof.
Oh, one thing I wanted to bring up to your point, Ray, was I don't know if you saw like last year where Pornhub put out a graphic of like what are the most searched terms or like the most watched types of videos, and like throughout all the South, it was like lesbian. and like for some reason like lesbian and ebony, I guess is the term, just like dominated the region. Wow. If that tells you anything.
That's incredible.
About Buffy, she is watching it right now. Do you know when that happens?
Oh, I don't. I'm pretty sure it does happen on screen because it was a big thing, and I was, I don't know. I'm old, guys, so I might have been in college when it was on air. But it. Okay, no, I can't actually answer the question because I can't remember which season a certain character dies, and so that I can't. It's just a whole bunch of spoilers.
Right before Dark Willow, like wasn't Dark Willow like the season 6 thing?
That's what Maui says. Maui says season 6.
Because like I was thinking, of course, I haven't watched Buffy in forever, but like that's kind of what led to her becoming a villain, wasn't it? Was Tara dying?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that show.
There's a show that I thought was. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say a more recent example of that sort of thing is The 100.
Okay, I was just about to say The 100.
Clark
You
and
guys.
Like, literally, I was like, "Have you seen The 100?"
Yeah.
Wait, does Clark love somebody other than Bellamy?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
He was a woman for a while.
Spoiler alerts! My God, guys, we are.
Until they just kill her off.
Together,
Yeah.
and then like, there's an afterlife situation. Ah!
Oh wait, is it he leaves and then she falls in love with a woman and then he comes back and everything goes nuts?
I don't even
Shh.
There also
I
is.
think I quit watching after that
All
happened.
right.
It
So
was like the end of season 2 that happened, where she gets with the basically the leader of one of the other tribes,
Mhm.
who's a woman, and then it's sad because it was so short-lived, and then the person ends up dying. Yes, thank you. Spoiler word. The person ends up
Spare your
dying.
gaze. Spare your gaze.
Yeah, and then life is sad. That's the other thing, is the
Sorry,
stereotype
Mom.
of lesbian stories always ending badly. Like,
One of them has to die.
and one of them has to die. They have to be split up due to an earthquake. They just can't ever be together. Hashtag you'll never be happy.
It's one of
Well,
the
that was
reasons
due to
I've been
the whole,
avoiding
like-
watching Winona Earp for so long, because I know that there's a main character that's a lesbian, and I want to make sure that it doesn't end bad for her before I actually watch it. Because if it's gonna end bad, why start?
I absolutely do that. I absolutely wait until shows end before I did that with Black Sails too. I was like, if they're gonna ruin the end, like everyone's gonna be sad. I don't want to watch it. Black Sails has a lot of good queer representation. Weirdly, I know it's about pirates. It doesn't sound that interesting, but it is. There's also a lot of poly relationships in it, which I appreciate.
Oh, that never happens.
Yeah,
I know.
for real.
Never.
And it's historical fiction. I mean, it's great. It's pretty good. You have to get through the violence of the first season. There's some real rough violence in the first. I mean, there's rough violence throughout it, but it's a good show. But someone said something about Sense8, which that's a incredibly great, I think,
Yeah, I remember when
example of
that came
representation
out.
in that show.
It was a big deal.
The very first scene, I'm not going to spoil anything. The very first scene of the very first episode is two women having sex with a rainbow dildo. That's like the first thing that happens.
That's how you make an entrance.
It's
Right.
amazing. Thank you very much, Wachowski sisters. We love you. It's them. They did that one.
No joke, Maui.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that she was in it.
We have to watch that now.
Oh, it is Martha. Yeah.
Yeah, free management. Oh my god. Go for her.
Braxton mentions Hannibal in the comments, and I just want to say that I really loved Hannibal, and I got about halfway through the second season, and then I haven't finished anymore. And I'm very sorry about that.
Well,
Still have a Hannibal poster up in my room, but I have not finished the series.
I feel like Braxton makes a good point, because didn't it get canceled right when like Will and Hannibal were about to like sort
I
of
think I remember
get
hearing
together?
that. It did get canceled like right after it only made it to 3 seasons. And I think I remember hearing that like something actually did happen, but I tried to avoid spoilers with that show because I actually really liked it.
But I feel like that was part
finish
of the
it.
cancellation had to do with what I remember cliffhanger. There was a cliffhanger, and but I remember it having something to do with like with the ship, the gay ship, and whether it was going to go from subtext to text.
Yeah.
It was like, we're right there, it's going to happen, and then
Quickly, recommended or shows you think people have not watched that you recommend them to. Shows or movies in regards to queer representation.
not
Sense8
enough
would
people
be
watch one day at a
Sense8.
time.
One day at a
And
time.
that's why Netflix canceled it. But Pop TV picked it up, so it did get a 4th season.
And how is that queer representation?
Oh,
gonna be?
so it's
Oh, yeah.
a sitcom remake about a single mom with 2 kids, and her mom lives with her. They're a Cuban American family. The daughter, she's a teenage girl, about 15 or 16. What her like big plot with the first season is figuring out that she's lesbian and coming out to her family, and she ends up getting a not a girlfriend in the second season. She ends up dating someone who is non-binary, and it's just the cutest little romance. They're so great together, and it's a show that deals with so many things so well. Immigration issues and mental health and the way that veterans are treated after they come back, and then it also like has a main character who is queer, and it deals with her coming out, and it deals with her family's acceptance, and some of her family doesn't accept, and it's such a wonderful show. And Netflix canceled it like right after the 3rd season dropped, and I was heartbroken.
Yeah.
It's such a good show. It does
think
have a laugh track, so you gotta like look past the laugh track.
Okay.
If you get
It's one of those
points
Norman
and
Lear
ignore
like
that,
2
it's
camera,
still worth it.
Yeah.
2 camera, 1 set sitcoms of a family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of course it has to have a laugh track.
Oh.
I feel like some of those most successful shows are have some multiple representation things going on. What's the word I'm looking for?
Intersectionality.
That's the one. Thank you. Boy, we could play Taboo and be amazing. That was great. The intersectionality of multiple identities and multiple demographics being making things more real and more diverse and more interesting. I think those
just
are the
from a
shows
narrative
that succeed.
perspective, just like exploring multiple facets of a person is going to make a good story. Why aren't you doing this more? Yeah,
exactly. But that one sounds like One Day at a Time was doing that. I feel like Sense8 was doing that.
That's Sense8, Mom, right?
Yeah.
Sense8 is the show with Freema in it. Yeah.
What about
I
you
feel
guys?
like Black Sails is doing that, was doing that. It's no longer on the air.
Oh, Braxton's still talking about Degrassi. I honestly never watched Degrassi.
Me neither.
Yeah, me neither. Braxton, you're gonna have to discuss this one.
Okay, I have a call out for Hollywood right now that's on Netflix. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, is it any good?
Let me tell you, I cried for probably 3 of the 10 hours I watched. I don't know how they do it, but I don't cry a lot when it comes to shows. But that show is just like, okay, I'm over it. Oh no, more tears. It's just
like, so, like it's good then, right? Like,
pitch
okay,
it. Why is it good? Yeah.
Okay, so there's some problems with it. I don't know if it's good. It's something I wanted to talk about. But it's also like real, right? It's one of the first shows I've seen that has, or not one of the first shows, but it has a bunch of queer characters, a bunch of them. But it has a lot of predatory white male white gay characters.
Is it a period piece?
It is a period piece, and it's about Hollywood and how these directors would manipulate young actors to like coerce them into sex to get parts in films, which is such like a relevant, or it's so relevant to see that and to put more emphasis on like the fact that men can be sexually assaulted too and how bad it is. Sometimes though, my problem with it is they don't treat it as seriously as I feel like they should be. I feel like sometimes they do use it as like a joke or whatever, or like they just treat it more lightly than obviously how most television shows treat sexual assault against women. So that's like my biggest beef with the show. So that I can't like say I fully recommend it. It's just like I would say check it out for the conversations that you can then have about it.
And it is Ryan Murphy, so like,
That's what I was just going to say. That feels on par.
Yeah, I watch American Horror Story, and yeah, that's Ryan Murphy.
That's the thing. Yeah, then you.
Speaking of TV, though, Pose is another
Pose, yes,
representation.
Pose is like one of my favorite things that came out of Netflix last year.
It's so beautiful, and also very intersectional, and also really lovely. And also a period piece, though, because it's like set in the 80s.
Yeah,
cool.
The 80s ball culture.
Had a Puerto Rican character.
So we have about 4 minutes left.
Oh God,
man!
So I know this went by really fast. It's been a really nice conversation. So I'm going to wrap us up with one. Hi, Becca. Miss you. I'm going to wrap us up with one kind of short answer question. We didn't get to talk about movies very much. That was our one of our movies and anime, or 2 topics that we missed out on, but that's okay. So my question is, if you had to pick a movie or an anime or even a TV show or a book, that like if a 15-year-old came up to you in confidence and was like, I want to learn more about the queer community, what would you give them?
It's going to take me 4 minutes to
15-year-old?
Yeah, someone who's like, or maybe younger, but I don't want to like read out any good films.
You know what I'm gonna say. For younger, 15 or younger, I'm gonna say Steven Universe.
That's a good one.
That's the only thing I can say. Like, if you're talking about like young kids, I'm like, yeah, start with this and we'll work you up from there. It has Steven Universe has polyamorous representation. It has tons of people of color that are fully fleshed out characters. It has like a prominent like lesbian relationship as one of the main focal points, and they're fused together as one person, and they're the symbol of love throughout the entire show. Yes, and yeah, and like, do you know how many children's shows that has a serious polyamorous relationship? Like, just, no, you don't, right? It's there, and it's, 4 kids under the age of 12, and I'm here for it. And there's just so much. There's a gay storyline. There's like, oh my God, I can't. It's just, there's a lot going on.
I could talk a whole episode just about Steven Universe.
Clearly. Well, I'll do my homework, and then we'll.
Yes.
We'll get back to that.
Have to go with The Wayward Children. Books. They're short enough that they can get through them pretty quick. There are so many different characters that even if they don't like outright say this character is asexual, they describe it where they pretty much give the definition, and so it would give the reader more of a chance to learn that this is a real thing. And same with Kate is the trans character. It's very explicitly stated that his family tried to make him be a girl, but he wasn't a girl, he was a boy, and they didn't like that. So this is why he was taken into this other world. And so like it has a diverse range of types of characters as far as like queer representation. There's also racial diversity as well, which it's not just all white, which I really appreciate. The bi character is I want to say she's Chinese. Can't remember exactly, but there was a couple others. I got to reread the first book where they're all introduced. But yeah, that would be my go-to, because it's got
It's nice and
So
rounded.
much, yeah.
What
You
about
can
you,
learn a
Ray?
little bit about everything.
I can't think of a good movie, but TV for like younger kid, I would maybe think of like Sex Education. I know it was on our list of things to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's got some. I mean, I haven't watched season 2 yet, but at least in season 1, there was some great ace and queer representation that I really appreciated. I need to watch more of it to make sure that it sticks with that. But yeah.
My answer, which was another subject that we didn't get a chance to touch upon, that we had on our list, which is music. I think for me and my coming out, music was a really important part. I can't tell you how many times I listened to Girls Like Girls.
Haley Kyoko.
Yes.
Yes. I
watched
cried.
that
I went to
music
a
video.
concert and I cried during that.
Lucky.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Yeah, and that's also something that's really more easily accessible for the kids whose parents are like, you can't consume any of this kind of culture is music, and especially since it's all in the palm of our hands now. I mean, just playlists on Spotify, you can find like LGBT songs.
We can give you a good list of artists.
Yeah, make a playlist.
Exactly. That would be what I would give.
Girl in Red.
Nice.
All right.
Haley Kyoko, yeah.
Well, with
Also,
that,
Elsa is canonically ace, in my opinion.
Elsa?
I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm done.
That's a good conclusion to our night. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for coming on and chatting. That goes without saying. Anyway, that's our favorite band. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting. Like Maui put in our little comments, we will definitely have to do this again because there's so much more we can talk about. And yeah, and any closing remarks as we go? All right. Well, with that, we're going to log off. Thank you, Lotus. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ghost Maui, and everyone who left comments. This was super fun. So we'll see you guys on Friday for, I think we're having another special Echo show. So everyone tune in then.
Bye,
Great.
Braxton.
Bye.